Hello there, welcome to Africa News. A look at the top stories on the continent today. In South Sudan, amid fresh reports of ethnic violence, the UN says a mass grave has been found. The discovery follows over a week of fighting that threatens to tip the world's newest nation into civil war. In the Central African Republic, protests calling for the departure of French troops are mounting, with residents in Bangui accusing them of taking sides in the conflict. Meanwhile, President Detainee has appealed for calm. And in Egypt, thousands have attended mass funerals for the victims of a bomb blast north of Cairo earlier today. A suspected suicide bomber detonated a car bomb, killing at least 15 people outside police headquarters. Hello and welcome. Firstly, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir says government troops have taken control of the Jonglei state capital, Bor, a key town which rebels loyal to ex-deputy Riek Machar seized last week. The news comes as the UN announced a mass grave has been found in the world's newest nation, this amid fresh reports of ethnic violence caused by a power struggle between President Kira Dinka and Machar and Nuer. Now, allegations are circulating that Dinka soldiers in and around the capital, Juba, have been killing Nuer men, while elsewhere in the country, Nuers are said to be targeting Dinka militia. Our special envoy, Duncan Woodside, sent us this exclusive report from Juba.
In the shadow of an aircraft stairwell on a UN base, men from the Nuer ethnic group recount fleeing for their lives from Dinkas on a murderous rampage.
We were hearing gunshot, not sporadic, but one shot. Like for 5 minutes you will hear a gunshot, and then after 5 minutes you will hear another gunshot. What was next is that I thought I'm going to die just next. And then the police who was at my door was waiting for me and looking at those who were being shot, and then I have to sneak and break my fence, which was made of bamboo.
It's not just claims of house-to-house killings. 2 survivors with multiple gunshot wounds claim over 250 men were herded into a police station where all but 12 were allegedly massacred.
275 people, and we remain 12 people still alive now.
It was horrible because to survive, you have to cover yourself with the bodies of dead people. And during the 2 days, the bodies started to smell really bad. I just don't want to talk about it.
The army denies Dinka elements of the military have anything to do with the killings here in Juba. A spokesman blamed criminals, some of whom may have stolen army uniforms.
Well, for more on this story, I'm joined by our correspondent Duncan Woodside, who's now in Nairobi for us. Duncan, given the current situation in South Sudan, are we fast descending into ethnic civil war?
Well, obviously that is a significant risk. We've seen a situation whereby an attempted coup, that's how it's been viewed by the regime, has quickly spiralled into tit-for-tat ethnic violence. Of course, we've seen the alleged targeted killings around Juba, that's referred to in the report just now, but also there was a massacre of Dinka people at a UN peacekeeping base in Akobo, Jonglei states last week, and also other instances as well of ethnically targeted killing. So obviously when that kind of thing starts happening, then it's very difficult to pull things back from the brink. And at the moment, the international community is having to engage in a situation where the two sides are escalating all the time.
I mean, Duncan, clearly some ethnic strife taking place there, ongoing. What about the humanitarian situation? What's being done for those who are being forced to flee because of this violence?
The humanitarian situation is obviously deteriorating all the time. This crisis is only a week old, but the United Nations is now talking about not tens of thousands of people being displaced, but hundreds of thousands of people displaced, not just in the UN camps, but apparently a lot of people fleeing into the bush, where of course it's very difficult to meet their needs at all. Even within the UN camps, the situation is dire. I've been at one camp over the past couple of days near the airport in Juba, the capital, and there's very little sanitation there. There's basically sewage and urine running through the camp. There's very little food provisioning going on, people going hungry. I spoke to one man when I got back to Nairobi tonight by phone who says he's still not been fed, despite the fact that he's been there for a week. The UN says it's distributing some rations in terms of porridge each day, but obviously that's not getting through to everyone at the moment. And really the situation is extremely difficult. And obviously the United Nations, they're having to fight against a backdrop or operate against a backdrop where the situation has just escalated far more quickly than could have been anticipated.
Duncan Woodside in Nairobi, thank you very much for joining us. Well, in news just in, the UN Security Council has approved plans to almost double peacekeepers in South Sudan to 12,500 troops. We'll bring you more as that evolves. Now, in the Central African Republic, despite both French and African peacekeeping troops being deployed to restore calm, the unrest continues. Dozens of Muslims protested in the streets of Bangui this Tuesday, demanding the departure of the 1,600 French troops that they accuse of taking side in the nation's sectarian conflict between Christians and Muslims. As tensions escalate, it's not only French forces coming under fire. African peacekeepers are also facing criticism following reports that Burundian and Chadian troops exchange fire. Well, amid the strife, the number of casualties is also growing.
There is a growing sectarian gap between Christians and Muslims. Violence, revenge attacks, pillaging and lynching is rife in Bangui. This morning we had 40 wounded people arrive all of a sudden. 3/4 were seriously injured with bullet wounds and the others were less seriously injured in the panic. The conflict is spreading to the ranks of the African Union force, MISCA. According to the Burundian contingent, Chadian soldiers attacked them with grenades Monday to free 6 former Seleka rebels. According to civilians, Chadian forces are defending the rebels. Chad has been a regional power omnipresent in the Central African Republic for years.
Away from the Central African Republic in Egypt, thousands have been attending the mass funerals for victims of a deadly bomb blast north of Cairo today. A suspected suicide bomber detonated a car packed with explosives outside police headquarters in Mansoura city, killing at least 15 people and injuring scores. The attack is one of the worst since the army deposed Islamist President Mohamed Morsi on July the 3rd. Clovis Casale reports.
Following the deadly attack, thousands took to the streets of Mansoura to mourn their dead. Wrapped in Egyptian flags, the corpses were carried through chanting crowds. Several policemen were killed and over 100 people were injured in the suspected suicide car bombing on Tuesday outside Mansoura's police headquarters. Some security forces say they live in constant fear.
I leave my home every morning and I know that I might not come back to my kids. My mother and my family call me 5-6 times a day to check on me to ask how I am. I tell them as long as we are here, we will achieve security in this country.
Shortly after the attack, the Egyptian government suggested the Muslim Brotherhood was behind the killings, a claim denied by the Islamist movement. While visiting some of those wounded in the bombing, the Interior Minister said terrorists were looking to derail the democratic transition and January's key referendum.
All of us, from myself down to the lowest soldier, are determined we will destroy these terrorists. Such incidents won't scare us, quite the opposite. It will strengthen us to fight them and destroy them. And this will be soon, God willing.
The bombing triggered scenes of violence in Mansoura, with crowds setting a bus on fire, accusing the company's employees of being Muslim Brotherhood supporters. Since the army overthrew elected President Mohamed Morsi after mass protests against him, Egypt has been plagued by violence. Thousands of Islamists have been arrested and more than 1,000 killed in military crackdown.
Malian authorities have apprehended the former head of Islamic police for the northern town of Gao, who imposed hardline Sharia law during a 10-month occupation by Al-Qaeda-linked rebels. Mali's military confirmed Aliou Mahamar Touré was detained on Monday near Gao. As one of the leaders of the Movement for Unity and Jihad in West Africa, Touré reportedly gained notoriety by ordering the amputation of limbs for those convicted of robbery and other crimes. And finally, it may not be an obvious holiday destination for some, but Mogadishu's beaches are packed with visitors this holiday season, with many heading to the Somali capital for a vacation. Much of Mogadishu's beauty disappeared during 2 decades of violence, but these days the seafront offers a sense of newfound liberation. Despite sporadic attacks since al-Qaeda-linked rebels were fought out of the city by peacekeeping forces, Somalia's tourism director says a lot's being done to turn Mogadishu into a holiday destination.
Relaxing and everybody is having a great time. People are swimming, children are running around, and we're here to relax and have coffee, and it's very progressive.
Well, some welcome news there. You're up to date. We're back in about an hour's time. Do join us then.